The silence in the boardroom was not empty. It was a dense, physical thing, a crushing weight of failure that pressed down on the thick pile carpet and the polished obsidian table. It was the sound of 12 failed translations, 12 highly paid professionals who had withered under the arctic gaze of Mr. Kenji Tanaka. The air, chilled to a precise 68 degrees, crackled with the unspent fury of the American, Marcus Thorne, a man whose face was a thundercloud of crimson. His final words, a snarl of English dripping with contempt, hung in the air unanswered. "This is an insult. A pathetic circus." Across the table, Mr. Tanaka's reply was a blade of Japanese, low and cold, each syllable a perfectly formed shard of ice. The 12th interpreter, a man with sweat beading on his pale forehead, simply shook his head, stammering, his confidence shattered into a million pieces. The billion-dollar deal, the culmination of months of brutal negotiation, was dead. It had been murdered by the vast, unbridgeable chasm between two languages, two cultures, two empires. In the corner of the room, near the brushed steel wastebasket she was about to empty, Anelise felt the vibrations of that failure in her bones. She pushed a stray curl from her face, her light blue uniform a stark symbol of her invisibility. She was a ghost in this cathedral of power, a phantom meant only to erase the traces of the important men who occupied it. But she had heard the words, and she had understood. Where are you watching this from today? What city? What country? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. This is a story about the moment a ghost learned to speak. Anelise was a symphony of untold stories. At 23, her life was a testament to the quiet, grinding friction between brilliance and circumstance. She had a mind that saw the world in patterns, in the intricate grammar of human connection, but her reality was the smell of industrial-grade ammonia and the monotonous rhythm of a buffer polishing floors that would never bear her footprints in any meaningful way. Her journey to this silent corner of the Tanaka Corporation's penthouse suite began not in a university lecture hall, but in the hushed, dusty aisles of a neighborhood library. There, surrounded by the ghosts of forgotten authors, she discovered her gift. It began with Spanish, the melodic cadence learned from a worn-out textbook. Then came French, its elegant structure a beautiful puzzle to be solved. She devoured languages the way others devoured novels, not as an academic exercise, but as a deep, resonant form of empathy. She wanted to understand not just what people said, but the soul of how they said it. She taught herself Portuguese from late-night radio broadcasts, German from free online courses on a flickering library computer, and Mandarin from subtitled films she watched over and over until the characters became as familiar as her own reflection. Russian, Arabic, and finally Japanese followed. The last was the hardest, a language of immense subtlety, of unspoken context and hierarchical grace. She practiced by tracing kanji on fogged-up bus windows during her pre-dawn commute, her breath frosting the glass as she whispered the syllables to herself, a secret prayer in a language no one around her knew she possessed. Her uniform was a cage, but her mind was a passport to the entire world. Every day, she entered the gleaming steel and glass spire of Tanaka Tower, a monument to a power so vast it was almost abstract. She was a shadow moving through its halls, her presence acknowledged only by the pristine surfaces she left in her wake. She did not resent it. She simply observed. She saw the fear, the ambition, the exhaustion in the faces of the executives. She heard the coded whispers, the veiled threats, the brittle laughter. She understood it all. She was the silent keeper of 1,000 secrets, a linguist disguised as a janitor, waiting for a story that had not yet begun. The architect of the meeting's collapse was a man who moved through the world as if he owned it, and in many ways he did. Marcus Thorne was the CEO of a titan of American industry, a predator who saw negotiation not as a path to partnership, but as a battlefield for unconditional surrender. He had arrived in Tokyo with a legion of lawyers and a palpable aura of contempt. He viewed the Japanese customs of patience and indirectness as weakness, a flaw in the code to be exploited. His voice was a blunt instrument, his English stripped of all pleasantry, designed to hammer his opponents into submission. From the first day, the atmosphere was poisoned. He demanded, he threatened, he postured. And Mr. Tanaka, the Oyabun of an organization whose roots ran deeper than the foundations of the city itself, met this storm with the unyielding silence of a mountain. Kenji Tanaka was a man carved from granite and tradition. Power, to him, was not loud, it was heavy. It was felt in his stillness, in the deliberate way he sipped his tea, in the unnerving calm of his dark eyes. He spoke in spare, poetic Japanese, his words laden with subtext that the succession of interpreters failed to grasp. They could translate the dictionary definitions, but they could not translate the honor, the warning, the profound cultural weight behind them. The first interpreter was dismissed for being too literal, the second for being too informal. The third stumbled over a complex financial term embedded in a haiku-like metaphor. By the sixth, Thorne's patience had worn thin. By the ninth, it was gone entirely. He saw Mr. Tanaka's quiet deliberation as stalling, his nuanced language as obfuscation. He could not comprehend that in this room, what was left unsaid was often more important than what was spoken. The 12th interpreter, a respected academic, was the final casualty. He had tried to bridge the gap, to explain the cultural context to Thorne, who had cut him off with a dismissive wave. "I don't pay you for a history lesson. Just tell me what he's saying," but he couldn't. Because Mr. Tanaka wasn't just saying things. He was building a fortress of implication, and Thorne was trying to knock it down with a battering ram of brute force. The failure was not one of language. It was a failure of worlds. Kaido Tanaka watched the slow-motion catastrophe from his father's right hand, his gut twisting into a tight, cold knot. He was the heir, the bridge between the ancient traditions his father embodied and the modern, globalized world he had been educated in. With a degree from Stanford and a mind fluent in both the subtle dance of Japanese business and the aggressive calculus of Wall Street, Kaido was uniquely positioned to understand both men. And that understanding was a private hell. He saw the impending wreck with perfect clarity. He recognized the veiled insult in Thorne's feigned courtesy and the ironclad warning in his father's placid smile. He tried, in quiet asides, to guide the interpreters, to give them the missing pieces of the cultural puzzle, but it was like trying to describe the color blue to a man born blind. They lacked the lived context. They were translators, not interpreters of souls. During the endless, tense breaks, Kaido would walk the halls, the pressure building behind his eyes. It was on one of these walks that he had first truly noticed her. Anelise. He had seen her before, of course, a fleeting presence in the background of his life, a part of the building's silent machinery. But one evening, late, he had found her in an empty conference room on a lower floor. She was on her break, sitting on the floor, a small, worn book of Portuguese poetry resting in her lap, her lips moving silently, tasting the foreign words. He had paused, intrigued, but said nothing, not wanting to intrude. Another time, he overheard her humming a complex Russian folk song, the melody pure and haunting in the sterile hallway. He began to watch her. He saw the intelligence in her eyes, a deep, still well of awareness that seemed to miss nothing. He saw the way she watched the executives, not with envy or resentment, but with a kind of detached anthropological curiosity. He felt a strange, inexplicable connection to her, another soul caught between worlds. He saw his own conflict mirrored in her quiet dignity, the dissonance between the person you are and the role you are forced to play. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him, that she understood the disaster unfolding in that boardroom far better than anyone else. But she was the cleaning lady, a ghost. And ghosts, as everyone knew, were not supposed to speak. The final pronouncement from Marcus Thorne landed with the force of a gavel. "This is a waste of my time. Clearly, you people are not serious." He pushed his chair back, the sound a screech of finality against the polished floor. The deal was not just dying, he was executing it. Across the table, Kenji Tanaka did not move. Not a muscle in his face twitched. He simply inclined his head, a gesture so subtle it was almost imperceptible, a silent acknowledgement of the American surrender. His lieutenants, men with hard eyes and impeccable suits, remained as still as statues, their loyalty absolute. Only Kaido seemed to breathe, a shallow, desperate gasp of air as he watched billions of dollars and a strategic global alliance evaporate into the refrigerated air. The silence that followed was the sound of a vacuum, of absolute and total failure. This was it. The end. In her corner, Anelise felt a shift in the room's gravity. She felt the crushing weight of all that was about to be lost, not just the money, but the opportunity, the potential for creation, all of it sacrificed on the altar of arrogance and misunderstanding. It was an offense to the very nature of language, which existed to build bridges, not walls. For years, she had been a passive observer, a sponge absorbing the world's voices. She had honed her skills in silence, for herself, for the sheer love of understanding. Her knowledge was a secret garden she tended in the quiet hours of the night. To use it, to reveal it, was to step out of the shadows and become visible. To be visible was to be vulnerable. Her mind raced. She saw the long bus ride home, the anonymity of her small apartment, the safety of being unseen. She weighed it against the profound wrongness of this moment. The waste. The sheer, idiotic waste. She did not cry. She did not beg. She simply decided. Her hand, which had been resting on the handle of her cleaning cart, tightened. The plastic creaked under the pressure. It was a small sound, almost nothing, but in the tomb-like silence of the boardroom, it was a thunderclap. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. It was time for the ghost to find her voice. Anelise took a single step forward. The movement was a ripple in a perfectly still pond, drawing every eye in the room. Her worn, rubber-soled shoes made no sound on the plush carpet, but her presence suddenly filled the space. Marcus Thorne turned, his face a mask of incredulous contempt. "What is this?" "Get her out of here." Two of Mr. Tanaka's guards, stationed by the door, tensed, their bodies shifting into a state of readiness. Mr. Ito, the stoic head of security, placed a hand discreetly inside his jacket. But it was Kaido who reacted first, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and a dawning, impossible hope. He raised a hand, a gesture that was both a plea and a command. "Matt." "Wait." Annelise's gaze did not waver. She looked directly at the head of the table, at the impassive face of Kenji Tanaka. She bowed, not in servitude, but in a gesture of profound respect that she had practiced 1,000 times in her mind. Then she spoke. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it was clear and steady, cutting through the suffocating tension like a diamond through glass. First in flawless, formal Japanese, the Kigo reserved for addressing those of the highest status. "Tanaka-sama, yurushi kudasai." "Imiga Ashinaware Mashida, forgive my presumption, Lord Tanaka." The meaning was lost. The effect was instantaneous. A collective intake of breath. Mr. Tanaka's eyes, which had been hooded and distant, sharpened with a flicker of genuine surprise. His stillness was no longer passive, it was attentive. Before anyone could react further, Anelise turned her head slightly, her focus shifting to the American. Her English was crisp, unaccented, the precise diction of a corporate executive. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her tone perfectly neutral, "he was not insulting your offer. He was questioning its foundation." He said, "A house built on sand cannot withstand the whisper of the tide." It was a warning about risk, not a rejection of profit. The room was paralyzed. The ghost in the light blue uniform was speaking in two tongues, weaving a bridge between two men who stood on opposite sides of a canyon of misunderstanding. Thorne stared, his mouth slightly agape, the angry retort dying on his lips. This was impossible. This was a disruption of the natural order of things. The cleaning lady was explaining the nuances of a billion-dollar negotiation to him, and for the first time that day, he was listening. A long, perilous moment passed. Mr. Tanaka studied Anelise, his gaze intense, analytical. He was a man who understood power in all its forms, and he recognized the scent of it now, emanating from the most unlikely of sources. He gave a single, curt nod, a gesture laden with immense weight. Suzukaru, continue. The word was a key, unlocking the room from its paralysis. Anelise became the conduit. She stood between the two titans, a living Rosetta Stone. When Thorne spoke, spitting out aggressive jargon about market penetration and aggressive leveraging, Anelise filtered it. She received the raw data of his words, but translated the underlying intent. She presented his points to Mr. Tanaka using Japanese concepts of mutual benefit and long-term stability. Kyozan Kaioi, she transformed his threats into strategic considerations. When Mr. Tanaka replied, his words sparse and layered with meaning, she unspooled them for Thorne. She explained that his request for a controlling interest was not just a financial sticking point. It was a matter of honor, an insult to the legacy of a company that was intertwined with the nation's history. He is not saying no, she clarified, her voice calm and authoritative. He is asking you to understand that you are not buying a company. You are asking to be welcomed into a family. The rhythm of the negotiation changed. The animosity began to bleed out of the room, replaced by a tense but focused energy. Kaido watched, mesmerized. She wasn't just translating words, she was translating worlds. She was building the bridge, plank by plank, over the abyss of their mutual ignorance. Finally, believing he had found a new angle of attack, Thorne strode to the massive whiteboard that covered one wall. He snatched a black marker and began to draw, his movements sharp and angry. He sketched out a complex, chaotic diagram of the proposed global supply chain. This is the sticking point, he sneered, throwing the marker down. Your logistics are archaic. Our models show it's impossible to guarantee delivery schedules with this mess. It's inefficient. It will fail, he turned, a smug look on his face, believing he had presented an unanswerable, practical problem. Solve that, it was a challenge meant to humiliate, to prove the ultimate superiority of his methods. He expected silence. He expected failure. He did not expect Anelise to walk calmly towards the board. Anelise looked at the chaotic web of lines and arrows on the whiteboard. To the others, it was an unsolvable mess, a testament to logistical friction. To her, it was just another language, the language of systems. Her mind, trained to find the hidden grammar in disparate languages, immediately began to see the underlying structure, the flawed syntax in Thorne's model. The patterns were there, obscured by his aggressive, linear assumptions. She picked up a blue marker, the cap clicking off with a definitive snap. The sound echoed in the silent room. She did not erase his work. That would have been an act of disrespect. Instead, she began to augment it. Her hand moved with a fluid, confident grace. She drew new lines, elegant curves that bypassed bottlenecks. She introduced concepts she had absorbed from dense academic papers on network theory and multimodal logistics she'd read on her phone during her lunch breaks. She added nodes representing consolidation hubs in emerging markets Thorne had dismissed. She sketched in a dynamic scheduling algorithm that could adapt to port delays in real time. Then she began to write. Beside the new pathways, she wrote clear, concise annotations. On the left side of the board, she wrote in Japanese, her kanji characters perfectly formed, a calligrapher's elegance in a janitor's hand. On the right, she wrote in English, her block letters neat and precise. She wrote equations for optimizing container capacity, citing principles of combinatorial mathematics. She presented a solution that was not only more resilient and efficient, but was projected to be 17% cheaper than Thorne's own aggressive estimate. She had not just solved his problem, she had transcended it. When she was finished, she placed the cap back on the marker and set it down in the tray. She stepped back, leaving her work to speak for itself. The silence in the room was no longer heavy with failure. It was luminous with awe. Marcus Thorne stared at the whiteboard, his face pale with disbelief. He, the titan of industry, with his army of analysts and supercomputers, had been outthought, outmaneuvered, and outclassed by a woman in a cleaning uniform. Mr. Tanaka's eyes moved from the board to Anelise, and for the first time, They held an unmistakable glimmer of profound respect. The deal was made. The signing of the documents was an anticlimax, a quiet formality after the true miracle that had transpired. Marcus Thorne, a man humbled and disoriented, approached Anelise as his team packed their briefcases. He cleared his throat, his usual booming confidence replaced by a hesitant uncertainty. That was
extraordinary.
My company would pay you a fortune. Name your price. A directorship. Head of global logistics, he was offering her a key to his kingdom, a world of wealth and status. Anelise simply looked at him, her gaze steady, and gave a small shake of her head. Thank you, Mr. Thorne, but I am not for sale. Her voice was quiet, but her dignity was a fortress. She had not acted for money or for position. I was just doing what was right. There was a problem, and I saw a solution. Her refusal was more powerful than any acceptance could have been. It left Thorne speechless. He could not comprehend a motive that existed outside the calculus of personal gain. He simply nodded and walked away, a lesser man than the one who had entered the room that morning. After the Americans had departed, Mr. Tanaka dismissed everyone with a silent wave of his hand. His lieutenants, his security, even his own son, Kaido, filed out of the room, leaving Anelise alone with the most powerful man she had ever met. The vast chamber seemed to shrink, the silence now intimate rather than oppressive. Mr. Tanaka gestured to the chair opposite him, the one Marcus Thorne had just vacated. It was a seat of power, a throne in this corporate pantheon. Anelise hesitated for a moment, then sat, her back straight, her hands resting calmly in her lap. For a long time he just looked at her. Hachi kakakugo, he said softly. 8 languages. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Anelise nodded. Hi, he wanted to know her story. Not with pity or condescension, but with the genuine curiosity of one formidable intellect encountering another. She told him. She spoke of the library, the late-night radio, the quiet hunger for knowledge. She spoke not of hardship, but of passion. He listened, his head tilted, absorbing every word. When she was finished, he spoke. Power is not a costume one wears. It is the structure of the bones. Your uniform was a costume. Your mind. That is your skeleton. It is unbreakable. He leaned forward. I am not offering you a job as an interpreter. That is a tool. I am offering you a position as an advisor. A seat at this table. Permanently, it was not an offer of employment. It was an offer of belonging. An offer of respect. Anelise's new beginning did not start with a thunderclap, but with the quiet click of a door. It was the door to the executive suite, and this time she walked through it not to clean, but to command. Her light blue uniform was gone, replaced by a dark, impeccably tailored suit that felt like armor and a second skin all at once. The first time she sat at the obsidian table as a member of Mr. Tanaka's inner circle, a profound silence fell over the other advisors. They were the same men who had never seen her, whose coffee stains she had wiped away, whose careless trash she had collected. Now they saw her. They saw the mind that had saved an empire, the quiet strength that had faced down a titan. Kaido, sitting beside her, gave her a small, respectful nod, his eyes filled with admiration. Her presence fundamentally altered the room's chemistry. She brought a perspective they had never considered, the view from the ground up. She spoke of logistics not as abstract figures on a spreadsheet, but with an understanding of the people who made the supply chains run. She spoke of global markets with the nuance of someone who understood their cultures from the inside out. She was not just an asset. She was a paradigm shift. Her journey was a testament to a quiet, unyielding truth that talent has no zip code, brilliance wears no uniform, and true power is not the ability to command, but the wisdom to listen. She had not been rescued. She had, through an act of profound courage, simply claimed the space that was always rightfully hers. The world is full of ghosts, invisible people with universes burning inside them, waiting for the one moment when the silence becomes unbearable and they are finally compelled to speak. What unseen brilliance is hidden in the people you pass by every day? The barista who might be a poet, the security guard who might be a philosopher, the cleaner who might hold the keys to the world. Look closer. Listen harder. Let us know in the comments what you think the true definition of power is. Thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe for more stories that challenge the way we see the world.